I am safely back in good old New Jersey, and today begins moving day, where I have to, over the course of the next several days, start moving stuff, which is going to be time-consuming and stressful, and I got to hire people. So it is what it is, but I'm still committed to making sure I can get you guys a video every single day. And today I want to talk about, it's not the Red Scare. If you're familiar with what the Red Scare is, it was like when everyone was terrified of communism and leftism. It's kind of a brown scare, right? Does that make more sense? The Nazis, they wore brown shirts, so people are terrified of Nazis right now. When I saw Boston, the rally where you had less than 100 people who were not Nazis in any way, in this little gazebo surrounded by 40,000 people screaming things like Nazi go home and, no fascists or whatever, I'm like, man, these people are really paranoid. Why is this happening? Well, I'll get to the why in a minute, but first let's talk about some other instances where we've been experiencing this brown scare. So I heard a story when I was in St. Louis. A friend of mine from the Chicago area was telling me that someone she knew was stabbed because this person was accused of being a Nazi. Now, I looked into the story, I've seen the photos, and it is hearsay hearing this from, a third party. So I looked up the photos, and sure enough, there are rumors flying around that near the end of May in Chicago, a fight broke out between two people, and apparently one of them was Antifa, and one of them was a Nazi, and the Nazi got stabbed, or something like that. What I could find online simply talks about two guys who got into a fight, and one of them got stabbed. And there's nothing really there to say that had anything to do with Antifa or Nazis. But in the photos I was shown by my friend, who actually knows the person who got stabbed, the alleged story is that it was around the time there was some Trump rally or something was going on, and the victim wasn't attending the rally, had no idea what it was, and was walking through the area when someone saw his jacket or something and asked, "Are you a Nazi?" Apparently this guy got offended, they started going at each other, arguing, and then he ended up getting stabbed. So it might not be a, Nazi scare, but it seems to be in this vein of targeting people who might be Nazis. Now, something else, significantly more dramatic, happened in Colorado, where a man was getting out of his car, and he hears someone say, "Are you one of those neo-Nazis?" And sure enough, someone starts charging at him, stabbing at his head. He puts up his hand, takes the knife, blood everywhere. Now, why would someone just think this random person was a Nazi? Well, apparently this guy's got a haircut that resembles what people call the Hitler Youth haircut, right? It's long on top and shaved on the sides. This guy who was stabbed, he said, he wanted to explain to people. There was no conversation. He was just getting out of his car and someone pulled out a knife and started stabbing at him. And, I started wondering, could anyone really believe that a haircut is racist? That simply by having a haircut, you're a Nazi? I mean, we've heard of skinheads, okay? So the people who walk around with shaved heads, and then you're like, oh, they're skinheads, and somehow the haircut or their style represents the fact that they have a particular political belief. Are we seeing a new kind of skinhead idea, like someone's hair could define that define their political beliefs? But then we heard this story about someone on Twitter tweeting to Macklemore, right? Macklemore, he's the rapper guy. Tweeting to him saying that he's got a racist haircut. And Macklemore actually responded that he got rid of this haircut over a year ago. So I don't know if it's supposed to be a joke, making fun of Macklemore's haircut, long on top, shaved on the sides, or whatever. But he responded. He got rid of it. And now people are making the joke that Macklemore was trying to remove himself from the racist haircut. Now, finally, this is a man who claims that he came home and was confronted by many masked individuals in black who accused him of being a Nazi or a sympathizer and slashed him with a box cutter. He said that if the blade went any deeper, he'd be a cold corpse on the ground. Apparently what happened, Vice did this documentary where they followed some neo-Nazis, some far-right extremist white supremacists, and in this doc was a guy. Now, the victim knew who this guy was. And when people on Facebook started talking about how this guy was in this Vice documentary as a Nazi, the victim started talking about how he knew, this guy in the documentary and was surprised to see that someone he had known would become a Nazi. Like, how does that happen? And he started telling people, like, let's be calm, let's have, you know, a calm, reasonable discussion about this and figure out how we can try and, like, you know, maybe save this guy or something along those lines. Apparently, that is sympathizing with the neo-Nazi. And that resulted in people waiting for him at his home and stabbing him. So this scare, it seems to be real. I mean, at least in these past several instances, we've seen some kind of escalation where there are accusations of people being Nazis from rallies where you've got Indian Republican Senate candidate Vashiva denouncing racism, being called a Nazi. You get people coming home from work being confronted by people calling him a Nazi, or a guy just walking past a school in Chicago and being called a Nazi. People right now are absolutely terrified of Nazis. Now let's get to the why. Why are people terrified of Nazis? Well, here's what I can say. When I was traveling to St. Louis, I was in the airport and I was watching on TV CNN talk about the Boston rally. Well, anyway, CNN goes on and on and on about how this is not really a free speech rally. It is actually a white supremacist gathering. And it's a smokescreen, the smokescreen of free speech, so that they can come in and say horrible things about minorities. Was that true? No, that's not true. The free speech rallies emerged after Milo Yiannopoulos was chased out of Berkeley by violent anti-fascists, smashing windows, starting fires, Molotov cocktails, graffiti, that whole thing, famously spray painting "Liberals get the bullet too" on a building. In response to this, many conservatives said free speech is paramount and we're going to hold rallies to defend free speech. Out of all of the events that have happened, most of them were, some of the people who spoke or attended were far right, absolutely. Most of the people there were just run-of-the-mill Trump supporters, conservatives, and in fact in Berkeley I saw some liberals. Now, with the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, that's when it started getting a bit more extreme, and in fact, many of the Trump supporters didn't even go. It was just more white nationalists and neo-Nazis. The media needs to get you angry and scared to make money. It's that simple. I mentioned this before with when I talked about CGP Grey doing a video. It's a video called This Video Will Make You Angry, and he explains that anger gets shares. So, seeing all of these people who are absolutely angry about what happened in Charlottesville, absolutely angry about Donald Trump, they know that by pushing to the extreme, they can piss you off and get you to share content. What ends up happening? Viral memes about Nazis descending on Boston erupt. People start getting into this mob mentality. Like, oh my God, we have to punch Nazis. You had, back when Richard Spencer got punched, over and over again, viral memes. Punching a Nazi is okay, go punch Nazis. Well, what do you think's gonna happen when there's a guy on a street corner by himself talking to a camera and you run up and punch him in the head? He's gonna go get his buddies and they're gonna come back with shields and helmets and you are going to escalate the violence. Let's tone the things out. Like, look, people have bad opinions, right? Let's not try and start a war, you know? Be defensive, I'm totally down with that. So the media wants to get shares. The media wants to get you to watch, they want you to talk about it, they wanna piss you off, and they don't care what the ramifications are. Get this. This really pissed me off. I saw a story about the Boston rally in which they called the based stick man a white nationalist, right? The based stick man's Kyle Chapman. Now, I think he's got some pretty extreme opinions. He's a pretty hot-tempered guy, I'd say. You know, he's very much like, we're gonna fight back and defend ourselves, and he's very gung-ho. A lot of people like him, and a lot of people don't like him. He describes himself as an American nationalist, okay? American nationalist. And when you talk to him, basically what he says is, America first, right? That's a very common conservative trope, that they're saying we should take care of America before we take care of these other countries. In Berkeley, one of the speakers actually said, we need to stop being divided by gender, race, identity. That's not what's important. We are Americans first. And that's the mentality of many of these conservatives. So I wondered, why would this news story call Kyle Chapman a white nationalist? Is there something I don't know? So I reached out to this journalist and asked. I was like, hey, I noticed that you called Kyle Chapman a white nationalist. Is there anything that he's done or said recently to insinuate that he's aligned with these groups? Disclaimer. Yes, he was a scheduled speaker at the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. I don't know if he actually attended or what the deal was, but there is some crossover between Kyle Chapman and many of these far-right people. But while we can say there's an association, right? I think that's fair to say these people have been known to associate with these groups. Flat out calling him a white nationalist can be dangerous. White nationalists are people who are essentially calling for the ethno-state, the white country only for, you know, a country only for white people. Here's what this journalist responded to me. Well, he's white, and he's a nationalist. And so therefore, he felt justified to put in an article that Kyle Chapman believes, like calling him a white nationalist, essentially saying, here's a guy who believes there should only be a country for white people, which is not what Kyle Chapman has ever said. In fact, the base stick man, Kyle Chapman's got a mixed race kid. And I don't know if he's married or what the deal is, but his partner, this woman, is not white. Here you have several instances where people like Mike Cernovich and Base Stick Man are being called alt-right or white nationalists, and they're in mixed race relationships. It doesn't make sense, but you know what the reason is? The media wants to piss you off. They want to draw sides, and they want you all to say Nazi. They don't care that people are going to go out and get stabbed. They don't care that people have to change their haircuts now out of fear of being stabbed in the street by a stranger, because they just want to make money. This is the problem. Oh, this is one of the problems. A fair and open media is important for a free democracy. It's paramount. And I feel like we've lost that. You know, I kind of smirk when people make fun of Donald Trump. He's up at that rally the other day saying, the fake media, you know, they're the enemies. And then all the journalists start huffing and, oh, you're just making fun of us. And I'm like, man, the journalists who I see getting angry, I'm like, yeah, you know, some of these guys, you're good journalists. And so I understand why you're pissed off. But there's too much bad journalism out there. So I just shake my head and I'm like, you know what, man? There's certainly good journalists. And good journalism is the protector of a free and open society. But I don't think we have enough of it anymore. I think now we're just seeing clickbait garbage, which is freaking people out, making 40,000 people go out and protest, not Nazis, but calling them Nazis. This is the Brown scare. I think it sounds funny because it sounds like shit. Well, anyway, let me know what you think. Comment below. How do you feel about what's going on? We've seen these multiple attacks, people accused of being Nazis when they're not Nazis. Everyone's terrified. Are we doomed? I've asked this several times, and usually the conclusion is like, yeah, we're probably doomed. But maybe we're not. I don't know. There was a big protest in Phoenix last night. It wasn't so bad. It was kind of typical. Click the like button if you liked the video, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Timcast. If you want to support the work that I do, you can go to timcast.com/donate. Give whatever you'd like or give nothing at all. My videos are always free and available. You can also send me Bitcoin or subscribe through PayPal. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll keep the conversation going in the comments, and I will see you all tomorrow at 4 p.m., maybe in a different apartment.